We are going to 10,000 doors by the end of 2033.
Oh,
Let's go. Come on.
We dancing. Yeah, LeBron's properties.
We grew last year almost 70%. So last year we went from 580 doors to where we are, right now, which is over 1,000.
Welcome to Unfiltered, the official podcast of propertymanagement.com. I am your host, Dylan Scroggins, joined by the founder of propertymanagement.com, Mr. Matt Speer. And we are very excited to have Mr. Stepan Renc, the owner of Longstreet Property Management out of Portland, Oregon, with us today. Stepan, how are you?
Fantastic. Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. Happy Friday. And Matt, I'm kind of stealing a little of your thunder now, but we got to say it. We're talking to the number one property management group in the nation. So this is a big deal. I'm a little nervous.
I'm nervous. Stepan told me he was a little nervous, and it doesn't usually do the podcast, but I think I'm the one that's nervous. So yeah, this will be a fun conversation.
I'm nervous.
Let's hop in. Well, tell us, what was your reaction when you got that news? Because you didn't pay us to rank you number one. I say us, more Matt and propertymanager.com, but you find out you're number one based on data. What's your first reaction?
Well, surprised. I was surprised. I was stoked at the same time, but honestly, didn't expect that. I know there's a ton of great management companies, and I didn't know that we were going to rank that high. So that was my first reaction to when I saw the results.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what I've been most impressed, just getting into it a little bit, like right out of the gates, is like when our first conversation happened, it immediately jumped into processes, systems, the way you run your business. It wasn't like, hey, here's this silver bullet for growth or some fancy shiny AI thing we're doing. Like, I mean, even just getting on a call with you, I could tell you're juggling in a good way, like juggling a lot of balls, like you're locked in on the process and the system. So yeah, I think today I'd love to dig in a bit on, how you're doing that. Especially I think it's news that we can announce, it'd be your announcement, but you guys are expanding into Salem as well, right? So your 3 location, Corvallis, Salem, and then of course, Portland. So lots to talk about today.
That's right. Yes, we are in 3 markets. Right now, we just opened our Salem location, which we are stoked about. We have big growth plans for 2026.
Well, to kick us off, I'd love to go back. I know we talked a little bit about the Czech national team before we hit record, but tell us more about your story. Tell us how you got into property management. And yeah, we really like to talk to the founder first, and then we'll zoom out to the industry, et cetera. But we'd love to learn a lot more about you and how you got to where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to share. I'm from the Czech Republic originally. I grew up, I attended college over there, studied sports management. And while I was in college, I took part in work and travel summer programs. That's how I got to the United States. I was a lifeguard at a swimming pool where I met my wife, and that's ultimately how I got over here. 15 years ago, I moved to Portland, Oregon, started working for a production company where we ran retail marketing campaigns for big brands like Adidas and Nike. That's where I got my teeth in business over here in the United States. And I rose through the ranks of employment. And then eventually my father-in-law was retiring from his property management company at the end of 2019. And it's been always my dream to have my own business. So I decided to buy it from him, took over at the beginning of 2020, right before COVID hit. And then, we've been in it since.
So there's a lot there. Buying it from a family member, doing so right before 2020. Tell us about that period of time, because we're always looking for unique stories. I can't think of a more unique story that combines family elements, but also global crisis. So yeah, tell us more about what life was like then.
Before 2020, at the end of 2019?
Yeah, that whole season of life. Yeah, tell us more.
That whole season? Yeah, well, that was interesting. I was working for retail marketing company, and we were losing our biggest client at that point, which came with layoffs. And I was one of the people to be laid off. And at the same time, my father-in-law, fantastic guy, was deciding, hey, I'm starting to be done with this. Do you want to take over the property management company that I started in 1995? I was not sure, property management, what is it? Toilets, light bulbs. I'm not sure if that's my cup of tea because I studied sports management. I was excited, have always been excited about sports. I was in touch with one of my past employers and mentors from the Czech Republic who actually was pitching me on starting a running series over here in Oregon because we have so much beautiful outdoor spaces over here. I'm glad it didn't happen because, then COVID came and the races would not have been a great thing. But fortunately, I chose to buy that company and been growing and developing it. And I'm truly having a blast doing it. I love doing it day in and day out. Yes, it's frustrating at times, many times, but overall, I'm living my dream.
I mean, drinking from the fire hose too. With you make the decision, you buy the business. National pandemic hits, and you'd mentioned that you had no property management background, so you're figuring that out, and then also trying to figure it out with all of these new rules and regulations. And I mean, we were all figuring it out back then. It's I was actually my phone, my home screen, my phone will put a random. I don't know how it does it. Whatever. I sound old even saying I don't know how it does it, but it puts a random photo up for my featured photos. And it pulled a photo up when my hair was really long during COVID. I thought it looked awesome. I can confirm. I will not share this photo with anyone. It did not look awesome. So it was just a weird time. So yeah, talk through how the pandemic sort of impacted your learning curve.
Yeah. It strangely it helped us because I have a strong project management background. I ran multiple high-profile production campaigns for Nike. I was in charge of leading the retail marketing campaigns execution for our agency, for Super Bowl, for NBA All-Star multiple times, launching LeBron James's shoes. So I've had the experience of running large project teams as well to reporting to high-profile clients who wanted everything in the highest quality yesterday, right? So in property management is very similar to project management. So when I took over, what I started working on is pretty much one of the first things that I did was I switched the old version of Rent Manager to AppFolio, which helped us tremendously because we could sign rental agreements electronically and remotely rather than the way that we've been doing it up till that point, which was in person and in paper. That's maybe I got lucky at the beginning of the journey, right before the pandemic hit, that we selected the right tool that allowed us actually to continue the business during the pandemic. And then there was, yes, we had to make adjustments, in terms of inspecting properties, but also in terms of rent payments. There was a lot of government and support money available all of a sudden. So people were not really getting behind on rent. Plus, we were able to really hold their hands and walk them to the assistant agencies and collect rent that they were past due on. It was due on right now and it was present. So when all was said and done at the end of COVID, we were better off than when we were started. And of course, our owner clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you can launch LeBron James' shoe and deliver that, I could see how you were used to, an owner that's wanting their cash flow statement yesterday, handling that back and forth. So that's very cool.
Yeah, that's the first LeBron reference we've had on the podcast. So we're breaking barriers here.
Yeah, it was a cool project. We launched multiple of those shoes, but the coolest one was in Miami. There's this parking structure over there. Very cool architecture where we made custom build. LeBron showed up at the end. And, when you spend 3 straight days working day and night, not sleeping, making it happen, and the clients put extreme pressure on you, LeBron is coming, we gotta get it done, then you get calloused, and it actually, helps quite a bit. It's a good boot camp.
Yeah, and it's inspiring for me to hear, and hopefully for our listeners too, because it's a wide variety of people, right? Some people who have 200 doors, some people who have 2,000 and been in the game 20 years, some people, hopefully, who might be considering getting in this space. We interviewed somebody last week, Chaz Foote out in California, who bought a PM business, kind of in a similar stage of life, maybe or a little earlier than when you bought into yours. But it's really interesting. You went from, I know it's a longer story, but basically unemployed to running one of the top property management groups in the nation in a 6-year span. And I hope a lot of people are inspired by that, because you never know when opportunity is going to strike, but also hope people are challenged by that. The people who have been in the industry 15, 20, 25 years, who still can't increase their door count, or complaining about their clients every day. Look at you. You've done it, and you've done it in a pretty fast amount of time. So I'd love to hear from you. Yes, you've already mentioned already about your past experience with these high impact, high touch clients, et cetera. But what are some of those in those first like 3 to 6 months? What were the biggest things you had to learn that you think set the foundation for where you're at now?
And also, if I could add too, tell the listener like how many doors did you buy at the time?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's at the end of the day, that's it's like, what was your starting point, and then where are you at today? And then I'd love to hear that answer that question that Dylan just asked as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I bought 120 doors at the beginning. We are right now about 1,040. So we have grown over the past 6 years that I've owned the company. Sorry, could you remind me on the other part?
Yeah, no, that's perfect context. 'Cause, I mean, it's like somebody could have listened to this and said, "Oh, he just steps in, he buys his, father-in-law's amazing business, already just crushing it." But I'm sure it was a great business, and sounds like he's a great guy. But you bought it with about 100 doors, and it's 10x that today. So, but yeah, Dylan, your question was really centered around, what were the kind of drinking from the fire hose? Like, what were the things you learned that first like 6 months? I mean, going from sports and, project management to property management, big leap.
Yeah, absolutely. So bought 120, lost 30 almost immediately out of that, because the biggest client unfortunately passed away, and the children decided to liquidate the portfolio. So like we went down pretty quickly. One of the first things that I did, besides modernizing the PMS, was that I hired a coach. And that was significant on my journey. I started working with Jason Hall of DoorGrow, and it was truly, an eye-opening, life-changing experience for me, because he was able to get me in the right mindset. He helped me with setting our website and, setting our visuals and marketing. But what I took from it is, a lot of advice. And one of the biggest piece of advice that I got from him was like, be something, pick a path and specialize. So at that point, I decided we're going to specialize in managing single family, small multifamily homes up to 50 units that are going to be long-term and unfurnished. And that we're going to select our clients, and we are going to work only with clients that meet certain criteria that we have. So don't be everything to everybody, but specialize. So that was definitely a great start, great foundation for our journey at the beginning.
I'll just say, with the other software stack, what are some of those other softwares that you added in that first year that you felt were a benefit? I know you mentioned Tenant Turner, Lead Simple, et cetera. Would love to hear about more of those foundational tools that you use, being fairly new to the game and assuming that your father-in-law was not using them.
Yeah. So besides AppFolio, the next one was Tenant Turner. That was a game changer as well, which significantly helped with the leads, scheduling and follow-up. And ultimately, a few years later, we added the self-showing technology over there, which is critical. I don't understand how we would do it without Sentry Locks and self-showing boxes. Those were the two softwares at the beginning, if I remember it correctly.
And what about the maintenance side of the business? Are you in-house, hybrid? Do you, third party all of the maintenance? And then what tool do you use to manage that?
Yeah, mainly we are in-house. So we have 8 maintenance technicians and 2 full-time inspectors. We currently use Property Melt to schedule and coordinate. We used to do it in AppFolio. We switched to Melt about 2 years ago. We try to do as much in-house as possible, because we do control the resource. We do control the pricing, and that is critical for the tenant relationships and the owner relationships. But some things that we don't know how to do in-house, like higher level electrical or plumbing or HVAC, we have a network of trusted partners that we have worked with. We have long relationships with them. They give us preferential treatment and pricing. So that's the relationships we leverage when we cannot do it in-house.
And when you started, did the business have maintenance in-house? Because just the scale of 100 doors, even if it was in-house, is much different than, because you almost have to have that critical mass with maintenance for it to make any money and not make you go completely insane. You're like laughing because I think you've probably experienced some of that too. But tell me a bit about that, just going from 0 to 1 there.
Well, my father-in-law was the maintenance, and the tenants had his cell phone number, and they were calling him 24/7 basically with anything. So I started that way as well, and I quickly realized that I don't want to go down the same path. Now, our cell phone numbers, they're like holy grail, right? You don't want to give them to anybody. But it wasn't that much farther. Maybe we had 200 doors when we hired our first maintenance tech. It was also driven because I live in Portland and the business was only in Corvallis at that point, which is about an hour and a half away. I used to go there to Corvallis once a week, and meet with the only team member that we had at that point. So it was also a necessity to have somebody who could do maintenance to be on the ground. So fairly soon, and then as we have grown, maintenance is a very significant part of business for us and an important profit center. So that's why we have intentionally grown that department as well.
Yeah, and we launched today. We literally today officially launched the Vendor Performance Index, and I think you helped out with some of the survey responses on some of your tech stack. So thank you for that. Specifically because I see that we've had like over 1,000 responses, and so I can see sort of the mix between the companies that are like using Appfolio or their core property management system to manage maintenance, and then the ones that are adding supplemental tools like a property meld. What was sort of the before after, like what was that decision? You're doing maintenance in-house. I can sort of understand, like, you're expanding that team, that becomes more important, but like what drove that decision specifically? And like, could you be doing what you're doing today without a supplemental tool?
Without property meld specifically, that would be a fantastic question for my business partner and our COO, Andre. He's in charge of that. But high level, it was communication for us. Property meld allows you to have a conversation with the tenants in like a separate thread. With Appfolio, it's currently not possible. So you may be having a text conversation with a tenant about a renewal, and they ask you a question, and then all of a sudden a completely different question out of the blue from maintenance department arrives, which creates confusion and frustration. So it was communication, and it was also scheduling, because I believe at that time, Appfolio didn't have the option of a calendar view and building out the schedule for maintenance techs, in a graphic format as a calendar. And it's super important for us that our maintenance techs are fully utilized, right? So we have all their days filled. So the department is profitable. So those two main reasons were why we went with Meld, but I'm sure Andre would throw in a couple more.
Yeah, we'll have to get him on here at some point. But I've been grilling you here a lot, like rapid fire questions. And I think the reason for that is I think the average listener, the average property manager, they want to know like the DNA of how you did this. And so far the story is, all right, this guy comes in, buys his father-in-law's business, 100 doors, doesn't know property management. Now they're 1,000 doors. He's got maintenance figured out. Talk to me about like the elephant in the room, which I think is growth. How did you solve that problem? And how did you get from 100 to 1,000 in such a short period?
Okay. Well, there were a couple stages to it. It was not linear, right? We grew last year almost 70%. So last year we went from 580 doors to where we are right now, which is over 1,000 at this moment. So last year was the biggest jump that we've had, and we hope to continue, on the same trajectory. But at the beginning, to get this going, it was work. It was a grind. So what got us started was really going out there and starting conversation with realtors mainly. At the beginning, when the company is small, it's pretty much just you. That's about it. So what I've done is I found a couple solid real estate partners, realtor partners, that I presented, who I am, who our company is, what we stand for. And with those that we are aligned, we have the same philosophy, same values, we're still in touch with them until this day. And that we started referral relationships with them, basically. We don't sell real estate, so we are not their competition. What I've always tried is, that we are going to provide great service to your clients. We're going to make you look great. And then when it's time to sell, we're going to refer those relationships back to you so you can keep your commission. That's how it's based. And yeah, a lot of those relationships are in place until today. So that's what got us off the ground. I grew the company to about 300 doors. And at that point, it just starts to be too big for one person. So that's when my colleague Andre came on board, and he's fantastic at building systems. So at that point, the company is too big for one person. Until then, you kind of have everything in your head. You know everything about everybody and everything that's happening. Past the 300 points, in my experience, it's just starting to be too big. So we really invested a lot of time and effort in building the systems and the SOPs, which we ultimately fed into Lead Simple. And that's the foundation that truly helped us accelerate what we experienced last year and not fall apart. And that growth has been driven a lot of by the reputation that we have in the marketplace. We address maintenance quickly, try to communicate proactively and quickly with our tenants and with our property owners. We have good reviews, and that's what drove a lot of attention to us last year, and that's what allowed us to grow.
Yeah, I just remember our first conversation, and you talked about reputation and trust unrelated to propertymanagement.com, and obviously that's our core business model is being that trust layer in the property management industry. And so it all starts with that realtor. That first realtor conversation is like, hey, I can make you look good. You can only make them look good, and they stay around for 5 years if you actually make them look good. And so the fact that all starts operationally, and then you're right, like you get to 300 doors and it's apples and oranges. It's like you can either stay there at 300 or you can just reinvent yourself, which was, again, it sounds like a double down on operations. Because without that, you're just a train going down the tracks with the, wheels falling off, or a car going down the road with the wheels falling off. So yeah, that's just a cool to see that it's not linear, it's stair steps, and it's always reputation. It's always that core operational proficiency first.
That's a great segue to what I was thinking about is what stage are you at right now? And what I mean by that is, Calmar Group, we do a lot of the recruiting side where people calls for a BDM, increased door count. Now they need a director of operations, or they need a director of operations, get everything like really settled and humming. Like, all right, now we're ready to get some more doors. Let's do a BDM. So there's this BDM and director of ops dance that I see going, which is more of a sales operations dance. Where are you at in that dance? I mean, you just got to 1,000 doors pretty quick. You trying to settle down and get the ops good, or are you like, hey, no, we want to net another 30 every month this year?
We are going to 10,000 doors by the end of 2033.
Oh, we dancing.
Go. Come on.
We dancing. Yeah. LeBron's properties.
Yeah. LeBron, bring them on. Oh, seriously, that's our 10-year target. 3-year goal is 4,000 doors. At the end of this year, we want to be at least 1,500 doors. So we are building our business development team. We have a really great senior business development manager who is going to be in charge. We're hiring 2 more BDMs. So that's where we are. What has worked for us to kind of bridge the gap between the sales and the operations, which based on, the podcast I have listened to, that's always a friction point, right? Where you're handing over the relationship. We created a handover process, but also the business development manager doesn't get their commission paid out until the home is either leased or until we collect first rent. And that way they stay invested in the process and really try to help set up the property manager for success over there. And that system is unusual as far as I know in the industry. And I love how it works.
Yeah, I forget who it was. Somebody on LinkedIn talked about that first leasing cycle, because typically, I forget their percentage. I'll make numbers up at this point. It was like 70% of clients you bring on, you like bring it on where it's unoccupied. And so if you deliver quick occupancy and that first, experience for the customer, like something like doubles their lifetime value. Like they end up staying longer because their first impression was strong, which sort of like makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you've broken it down to the handoff. It's like, hey, BDM, you don't get paid unless your team member leases it. So yeah, smart move there.
It also, you know, helps align on the expectations. Your BDM then doesn't want to promise $10,000 for a house, because then it becomes unrealistic and the relationship is not then set up for success.
I could talk about Longstreet all day. I am fascinated with the 10x growth, especially even last year alone. I'd love to zoom out though. So for you, once again, I feel like your experience at a high level outside of PM has positioned you well in PM, because there are a lot of lifers. There's some people that have been doing this 20, 30, 40 years. Nothing wrong with that at all, but you just have this unique perspective. From that perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts on just the industry as a whole right now. What gets you excited? What might have you concerned? So if you were the president of property management, what are you thinking about for the industry as a whole right now?
I love the industry, honestly. It's still segmented so much that we are not, fighting amongst each other as a companies for the most part. And everybody's friendly and fairly open. And there's a lot of good content that people are putting out. And people are learning from each other, which, I frankly love the atmosphere. There's a lot to pick up over here. Where are we headed? AI, of course, is coming over here, and we are going to be getting super tools very quickly. So we'll be able to do much more with much less, and that's gonna have so many more ripple effects. So that's something that we've been thinking about a lot. We started exploring our options, implementing some things, and yeah, that's what I see coming.
I feel like you're giving off OpenClaw vibes. I feel like you're gonna build your own AI agent. Army, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We've got some plans over here at propertymanagement.com too. We'll talk offline. But yeah, I think that's definitely the industry direction.
All right, Matt, before we start landing the plane, anything else you want to press on in regards to tech stack, AI, industry, anything else?
I mean, I think we could get more into tech stack, but here's the cool thing. We've got another opportunity maybe to do a podcast follow-up with the number one property manager in the nation. So maybe we block off some time in the next couple of months and we get in more into the tech stack, specifically like AI. I think that's definitely top of mind for some people. So yeah, I'm good on my end. This has been great.
Yeah, no, well, we'll see you at Broker Owner. Have you ever been to New Orleans?
Many times. There were a lot of all-stars over there, so I spent a lot of times over there.
Yeah, I feel like Portland and New Orleans and a few other cities in America, they're just so unique. So it's going to be a good time. So Matt's in the van right now. I know we talked about it before we hit record, but we'll have the propertymanagement.com van. I'm sure we'll have some cold beers and maybe get some propertymanagement.com beads or something. I don't know. We might be those guys. I feel like there'll be enough of that there. But yeah, we'll definitely have a follow-up call. Can't wait to talk to you in the van. But awesome. As we land the plane here, this has been awesome. I've personally been really inspired. But we like to ask this question. It's become one of our classic questions. Being in property management's hard, right? Any role, especially when you own it and you lead the business. How has being in property management the last 6 or 7 years changed you as a person?
That's a great question. It's being in property management, you see a lot of things, right? You get to work with a lot of people. You see how they live. You are exposed to a lot of situations when people are under pressure, right? So like, especially when money is involved, either on the tenant or the owner side, you learn a lot. What I've learned about myself in the last 6 years is I really transitioned, from being an employee to being a business owner. And I truly gained a completely different perspective at life, because you have to make it happen, right? It's on you. You can complain all the time to whoever, nobody's gonna listen, but at the end of the day, you gotta get it done. And I've learned a lot. I love that, honestly. And as I said, I am truly living my American dream over here.
Love that. Yeah. And I would double down and say that I agree. Property management might be the most unforgiving line of business that you could choose, and for that to be, end up being your American dream, that's incredible. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
That's awesome. All right, now for some quick fire lightning round. What is your favorite tool or app in your business right now? And it does not have to be a PM tool, but it can be.
EOS, it keeps my crazy ideas at bay.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you have an amazing wife too, who's been on this entrepreneurial journey with you. I think we can shout out all our wives. So,
I do.
what about a book or podcast every PM leader should check out?
Yeah. So there's a number that I listen to when I go running. Evernest Property Management Show, absolute killer. Mark Cunningham, fantastic. We draw a lot from his philosophy. And, Peter Lohman, I subscribe to his podcast as well as newsletters. So those would be, I guess, the top 3 that I would name.
Love it. Well, my office is 4 blocks from Evernest, and this is a shameless plug, but Gray Hall, the new host, I placed him at Evernest 10 years ago. So I told him when I was starting my recruitment business 2 years ago, I was like, hey, look, man, it was all you, but I'm going to ride your coattails. My first year in business, I just talked about Gray on every sales call. So I bought him lunch once. Maybe I should owe him a little bit more there. So
Well,
anyway.
Dylan, too, your question of how does property management change you as a person? That was a Spencer Sutton question, because I think he almost made us both cry with his response. So I was like, holy crap, we got to ask that question again. So
yeah, Spencer was the first person we asked that question, and we're like, yeah, we're going to keep this question forever. Yeah, the Evernest guys are great. And Peter as well. He's a friend of the pod. All right, last question here. One word to describe the future of PM.
Tailored, I would say.
Ooh.
I think that AI will be able to, it's going to give us tools to run everything faster, smoother according to the process. But also, I think there is going to be an opportunity for really tailoring the service to individual owners or properties, which is currently not possible, right? When you're relying on humans. For example, the home warranties that we all hate, right? Why do we hate them? Because it's a part of the maintenance process. You don't want to, call a different number if your process is set up, you go through your maintenance techs. It gets forgotten that way. And that's why those mistakes happen. But if this tool actually guides you in the right direction, it will be able to provide more customized service to other owner clients. So that's what I see potentially happening, along, of course, with other things, other efficiencies and threats, but tailored. That's what I would say.
Tailored. You said tailored, and I immediately thought James Bond with the tailored suit. So I think we're talking to the James Bond of property management here.
Yeah, I don't know.
I agree. Well, we really appreciate it. Like I said, inspiring at a personal and professional level. Can't wait to see you at Broker Owner, and really, really impressed with what you've built. And I'm sure your father-in-law is proud.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. And I want to thank you, for leveling up the industry too, because property management companies, they could be viewed as a commodity, what is the difference between A and B? And by you really surfacing the data and the facts and being able to, for management companies to be compared based on numbers, it is huge. I told Matt at our first conversation that it was my bucket idea, to create something like that, but it's definitely not as good as you guys are creating.
I appreciate you saying that. I think we're both hitting our strides, and we're very excited to be on this journey to the 10,000 doors with you. I have no doubt you'll achieve that.
Definitely.
So, thank you. We'll have more conversations, hopefully in New Orleans.
Sounds good.
Definitely.
Looking forward to
We'll
it.
see you in a couple of months. Thanks so much.
All right. See ya.